happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And our very timely guest this week is Georges Azzi of the Arab Foundation for Freedoms and Equality, reporting from the Middle East and North Africa on the fight for LGBT rights.
We're going to talk to George at the top of the show about a number of very important issues. And then we'll move on to things like Mitch McConnell appointing America's most prominent religious bigot to an international government commission.
And that's saying something. Donald Trump's use of a different religious bigot to give the blessing at the opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem draws bipartisan ire, including from Mitt Romney.
And you know that nice speech our president gave last week about how he was going to lower prescription drug prices? It's a lie, it's a sham, and it will not work.
Where have I heard that before?
Yeah.
The U.S. Justice Department under Trump has initiated a crackdown on transgender inmates in federal prisons.
Breaking news just before we started taping today, lesbian wars in Alabama. Veteran lesbian state rep Pat Todd is accusing the governor of being a closet case.
Accusing? She's just informing us.
Okay.
This is a terrible story. A Catholic social worker was fired at a secular agency for refusing to counsel a gay couple. So she's suing, saying her religious freedom was abridged.
That's never going to end, you know.
Well, I'm going to talk about that at some length. I think it's one of the most important stories of the week.
Well, it is. Court rulings are advancing LGBT rights in Costa Rica and setting them back in Italy.
And I'm going to review 3 claustrophobic plays, including what I would consider an unmissable production of Long Day's Journey into Night, starring Leslie Manville and Jeremy Irons. But we turn now to our guest, Georges Azzi.
Literally turn.
Georges is the
founder and executive director
of the Arab Foundation for Freedoms and Equality, and we're going to put the website out there so that you can read about it. You are described as the first openly gay activist in the Middle East and North Africa.
Hi, yes, I'm the oldest. I mean, I'm one of the first activists to start the first LGBT organization in Lebanon, which was the first organization back then in the Middle East and North Africa. It was a group of people, so I was the head of the organization, and this is why I was visible back then.
And Lebanon is much in the news in terms of LGBT issues right now. They had their first Pride celebration last year in Beirut, and this year they were going about it, and they were stopped by the government. Talk about what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the second year for Beirut Pride, but the Lebanese LGBT community has been celebrating the International Day Against Homophobia for 12 years now. And every year we receive different kind of police intimidation, and we move on. Beirut Pride specifically is organized by a private company, by event organizers. Last year it went well, and I think this year the police said, let's try with them. I mean, it didn't work, the intimidation with activists. Maybe we'll go after, event organizers. And they did manage to scare them into canceling the event.
Well, they pulled the guy in. They said, you're encouraging debauchery and offending public decency.
Yeah, I mean, the first called him to say that you have an authorization missing, so it's a technical issue. Then it went into debauchery, and then they asked him, to cancel the events if he wants to leave the station.
So tell us what it's like start with where you're most familiar, where you live. Tell us what it's like for LGBT people in Beirut.
I mean, things have gotten better in the last 10 years. I mean, I remember when we first started the organization, every year the police would raid a gay, frequented places, arrest everybody, beat them, and the media won't even cover it. Or they would say, a group of perverts were arrested.
Just like at Stonewall.
Yeah, exactly. Now, LGBT are much more mainstream than they used to be. the media is our major ally now, and the media will defend us in Lebanon, which is a result of a long, 10 years of work between activists and journalists in order to establish this healthy relationship with the media. In general, I would say that the Lebanese public now is getting used to the presence of the LGBT community. In a study we conducted 2 years ago, more than 60% of the Lebanese were for decriminalizing homosexuality. So I think that society is ready, except that the society is much more advanced compared to the law in Lebanon. The law is extremely archaic. We have a completely dysfunctional parliament.
Well, what is the law?
The law actually is a law that was established by the French when they came to Lebanon.
It's always the colonials.
It is, and this is why it's funny when they tell me that homosexuality is imported, I reply homophobia is imported, not homosexuality.
Yeah.
So the law that we have condemns unnatural intercourse. So it's really vague, it's very elastic, that people can interpret the way they want. We did win several court cases in the last 4 or 5 years where judges said that you can't apply this article to the LGBT community anymore. It just doesn't make sense because homosexuality is not unnatural. However,
not for homosexuals.
Not for homosexuals.
Right, you had therapists start to say that there and say, hey, well, it is natural.
It is natural. Many judges are accepting the opinion of the therapist, except in Lebanon, unlike the States, there's no precedent. So if a judge makes a decision, it cannot be automatically imposed on another judge. So it's up to the judge to decide if they take it into consideration or not. And this is the problem, that we have this law that's still being used by the police whenever they want. It's not reinforced as much as in other Arab countries because there's a visible community now. There are several places for the LGBT community, but every now and then, the police can come and say that you want to use the law, like what happened with Beirut Pride this week.
What's it been like for you personally, especially being so out there and so visible?
At the beginning it was complicated for me, but now it's actually I'm in a much privileged position because I'm out. Because they know if they come after me, I'm going to be vocal about it. I have the support of the international community. I'm visible. I have access, to the media. Unfortunately, it's not the case for much more vulnerable groups who are forced to be in the closet, or because they're refugees maybe in Lebanon, or maybe because they're trans sex workers. Also, they are in a much vulnerable position. So, as an activist at the beginning, yes, I did receive the threats that any activist would receive. I did face some intimidation from the police, but eventually they get used to me, being stubborn.
And for your work, you have received the Philippa de Souza Award from Outright Action International. Yeah. We have a shot of you getting that this week from Todd Hill of Outright, one of their board members. And what was your message? You had this community of people who were concerned about international issues. What was your message to them?
Now, I wanted to thank our international community for all the support and the recognition of our work. It's important for us while doing this work in a very challenging environment to know that somebody has our back internationally, that we have our brothers and sisters that we can count on in case there's an emergency. And I think what happened this week with the Philippa de Souza Award is it's a celebration of this partnership between, us as a regional or national organization and international organizations offering some kind of visibility for us and recognition for our work.
So what is the work you're doing? What are you trying to accomplish there and in the whole region?
Well, specifically as the Arab Foundation, we came out of conversation between individuals in 2009. Back then, Halim was the only organization, and we consulted with other individuals.
And what year did you found that?
Arab Foundation, 2009. 2009. And we said, how can we use the Lebanese experience to basically move towards, help other countries? So we consulted with our community in Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and Jordan. And the feedback that was that let's take a step back and learn, because we don't know how to do our activism. We're learning in this region. Halim is the only example that we have. So our first program was mostly a capacity building program, a training program, an institute where activists can come, learn, and then they take all the knowledge they need and they start their own initiatives. And most of the 22 organizations that are established now in the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, are our alumni, people who graduated from our program. And after that, we developed into 5 different programs, a research program, a media program focusing on journalists, because we recognize the importance of the media as well, a security program, because we deal with emergencies all the time, and also we have our HIV and sexual health program.
So we hear horror stories, obviously, from Iraq, Iran, crackdowns in Egypt and elsewhere. What are the kinds of things that people are still going through there, and how do they cope with it?
Well, it's the MENA region is a big region, and the situation is different from a country to another. In some countries, the situation is bearable, like Lebanon, Jordan, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco, where there's a blooming community, and there's certain visibility. Things are not as good in Egypt, where we've seen recently the government is actively going after individuals and even supporters of the LGBT community.
Entrapping people through social media and arresting people.
In Syria, I mean, the situation in Syria is difficult for everybody, especially the LGBT community, because that adds, a layer of vulnerability to them, since when there's a state of war, there's no accountability, so they're the first victim and there's no protection offered to them.
And less availability of help and asylum or refugee status, I'm sure.
They have to go to the neighboring countries. One of them is Lebanon and Jordan to seek refuge, except, as most of the time the established services for refugees there is not accessible for the LGBT community, mostly the trans community as well. Right. Most of the services available are for families with kids, which we understand that, but that leaves, single people like gays and lesbians and trans somehow left alone, with little services offered to them or little priority offered to them, and this becomes challenging as well.
So what we hear about a lot here are the killings by ISIS, Al-Qaeda, other terrorists, people being thrown off of buildings, people being hung, stoned, whatever. Can you put that in context, how much of that goes on, how much that is people's daily lives versus a safer daily life?
I mean, ISIS is definitely an issue for everybody in the Middle East, and I can say safely that LGBT and non-LGBT are fighting ISIS. It's the horror stories that we hear there. Except what makes it a little bit more difficult for the LGBT is that fewer people care about them if they get killed, and this is why we feel sometimes that we need to put some attention on that. But again, that everybody is fighting ISIS. Us, even those who don't like the LGBT community, are fighting ISIS. So I think there is an issue. It's an issue that needs to be fixed, but it concerns everybody.
So what about the role of the U.S. in the region in general? We are horrified by what we see happening in Israel and Gaza this week, and taking Christian evangelicals over there to stir up, inflame hatreds.
And for the last 20 years exploding the region with war.
Exactly. So from your point of view, what is the U.S. doing there, good or bad, or?
I mean, under the Trump administration specifically, things are much more complicated, and they need to understand that when I'm a gay man, but also I'm Lebanese. I'm living right next to Israel, and my friends are Palestinians who are LGBT in Palestine, are probably died in the protest as well, again, on the border with Gaza. So we are much more than our sexual orientation, and we can't pretend that we care for the LGBT community and forget about other issues they have to deal with as well, being located in this region. And this is where things get complicated in the relationship of how USA is building its politics in the region, specifically the Trump administration. Israel is one of the biggest violators of human rights in the Middle East. And pinkwashing Israel by saying that this is a country that supports LGBT rights is not enough, because many LGBT are actually dying under the Israeli oppression as well. So we just need to have a different perspective of things. And we need, sorry.
So where do you get support laterally from other human rights groups or other groups in the region or in your country?
Building alliances is one of our strong points, and this is how we moved forward. We got involved, in women's rights issues, in politics. If we want people to embrace us for who we are, we need also to be part of this global society. And this is something that we've done. I mean, and we have our support on the national level and international level as well.
You've talked about how the Arab media, you say you're doing better with them, but that they are spreaders of homophobia. How does that work?
Egypt would be a perfect example about how the media plays an important role. We've had some good examples from Lebanon where the media was supportive and actually helped the community. But what happened in Egypt after someone raised the rainbow flag in the Mashroul Aila concert, which is a Lebanese band, the main singer is gay, openly gay. Soon after that, there was a mass hysteria across the Egyptian media. Basically, we had presenters, when talking about homosexuality, shaking and crying. So people would think that there's a dangerous virus invading Egypt. And Egypt is a very undereducated country. Most of the information they get is from the media. So they do believe what the media says. And when they say that, that we should be killed, they would believe that. And there's a complete dehumanization of the LGBT community that we felt we needed to counter. And then,
isn't this something that was done by the media at the behest of the government?
I think they conspire with each other. Of course, the media is controlled by the government, and Egypt is doing very badly economically, socially, and politically. So I wouldn't be surprised that, let's start this campaign just to distract people from the real problems and go after the vulnerable ones, which is the LGBT community.
As they did in Chechnya and all these other places.
What would you say to LGBT people who want to travel to any of these regions?
I wouldn't call for boycott for these countries. I think that our brothers and sisters in these countries need our support, and we need to be there for them. Just be careful and listen to the community there. Listen to what they have to say, and for your own safety, be careful when you go there.
Stay off Grindr.
Stay off Grindr, yes.
And what about?
But we're off Grindr.
So tell us something about some of the people who contact you from some of these more fraught parts of the region. What do you say to them?
Well, what do they say to you first?
Yes.
What are they looking for, and what do you say to them?
It's very easy for someone to feel alone in our region, because you're sitting there at home, and I was one of these teenagers, and the only information you have is on TV and from your environment, and everything is telling you that you're a horrible person and you're a pervert and that you will not be accepted, and it's really hard for someone to be alone and listen to all these negative messages. So this is why recently we did a video campaign where LGBT individuals from across the MENA region are saying to other people, you are not alone. And we wanted to use this new technology, the internet, the social media, to get to these individuals and to let them know that, if you need to speak with someone, we're there. We probably can't offer you all the help that you need, but at least, if you want to speak to someone, learn more about yourself, there are resources for you that you can use.
And they can go to the website for the Arab Foundation for Freedoms and Equality. It's AFEMENA.org and learn all about it. And these things these are not blocked in some of these countries, your website?
No, they're not blocked. Our website is not blocked yet, but there's always creative ways to get unblocked. So we have our security actually blog on this website that they can tell them how they can overcome the country's limitation.
And our viewers can learn more about this and how they can help, et cetera, if they go to your website.
Yeah. Yes.
You're doing tough and important work, and we thank you for taking a few minutes to come here. And
thank you for inviting me.
Talking to our audience.
Put us on your list and keep us posted.
I will.
Okay.
No
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you very much.
So we usually start with Donald Trump, but this week Mitch McConnell has outdone him in catering to the.
Well, you don't think this was Mitch McConnell? It has entirely to do with Trump.
Catering to the religious ultra-right, he has named Tony Perkins of the virulently anti-LGBT Family Research Council to a government post on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Now, this was established in 1998 under Bill Clinton in a more benign way, but Perkins is the guy who opposes anti-bullying programs as disgusting. He calls pedophilia a homosexual problem. He favors restoration of anti-sodomy laws, and he may get his way in this administration.
He's also not the only one appointed to this International Commission for Religious Freedom, Commission on International Religious Freedom. Gary Bauer, who I always adore for falling backwards off the stage, flipping pancakes.
He was the domestic advisor to George Bush, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And, they're both just monsters. one can only hope that these are just titular positions with no real substance. But
these people know how to make something out of these positions.
Yes, they do. And what they do is they hang around the White House, and they hang around the Congress, and they get themselves involved in policy making.
This group of people is the Trump base, and they never leave him, and they are getting everything that they want. In terms of judges, cabinet appointments,
everything that they want. Two of these nutcase monster evangelicals. But no
Tell us how you really
judgments,
feel.
Yes. We're in Jerusalem praying at the dedication of this U.S. embassy.
The blessing was given by a guy that Mitt Romney calls a religious bigot, the Trump religious advisor Robert Jeffress. He's from the First Baptist Church of Dallas, and he says you can't be saved by being a Jew. Mormonism is a heresy from the pit of hell, hates Islam, hates gays, says 9/11 was caused by abortion, and he thinks gay sex might make you explode.
And the closing benediction was delivered by John Hagee, another one of this stable of crazy people. And I don't mean to offend anyone else with that kind of language, but these people are really, they're very dangerous.
Well, literally, because they want this war that is being fomented in Israel and Iran. They want this war because this is going to lead to the rapture and the second coming. This is what they believe.
Yes, exactly. Meanwhile, our Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, was in New York visiting schools. You think, oh, okay, that's good. We want her to visit schools. But only religious schools?
Well,
public schools?
She went to one for Orthodox Jewish girls. Now, the Orthodox schools in New York are not teaching kids, many of them are not teaching basic education. And there are many Jewish people who are suing about this.
And what does the government of the United States have to do with these religious schools?
Oh, we're giving them a lot of money. New York gives them a lot of money because they're voting bloc. Well,
I can only hope that as the North Korea meeting potentially falls apart, as the dedication of the embassy in Jerusalem turns out to be a disaster, as Betsy DeVos goes around doing her nonsense, as Scott Pruitt is caught covering up the report on bad water, as Ben Carson is caught cutting all the funds for housing.
Yes, but they're going to stop abortion and gay rights.
I think this, this is progress in the collapse of the Trump administration.
Only if people are paying attention.
Well, that's certainly true.
All right. Well, and then there was the other big announcement from the Trump administration was this week was on prescription drugs, a private sector solution. But what he mainly wants to do is try to force foreign governments to pay more for drugs, which they're not going to do because they subsidize it for their people.
Which is propping up the pharmaceutical companies and, in fact, supporting their higher prices than the generic versions.
And the indication you have that this is a fraud is that drug stocks went up last week.
Exactly. And the fact that, he runs on this platform. I've always said no one who's voting pays any attention to platforms. But he made a very big promise that to fix this business of Medicare not being allowed to negotiate with drug companies for prices of drugs in the Medicare system and other government systems. And he just has done a 180 on that, and that is truly evil.
I mean, 60 Minutes did that wonderful piece a week ago about how this drug that not very many babies take, but babies need it, went from $33 to $40,000 a bottle. I mean, literally. And it is bankrupting some cities that have to pay for this insurance.
And you may think, well, I don't have a baby who needs this, so I don't care.
You need cops and firefighters, and they're firing them.
We're the ones paying for this.
Right.
Because the individual people are not all paying for this. The government is paying for it. Your insurance company is paying for it, and you are paying for it.
Now, we hadn't made much progress for transgender folks in prisons, but the Justice Department this week cracked down on trans inmates. They will now use biological sex, in quotes, to determine where they're housed and what bathrooms they used. Transfers based on gender identity will only be in rare cases. saying it's a response to women inmates in Texas who are suing us.
This is for supposedly
concern.
devout Christian women in Texas prisons who, I'd like to hear more about that, but they say that they are endangered by having trans women in their jails. Well, how much danger do you think trans women are in when they're housed with male prisoners in their cell?
No less than Caitlyn Jenner went to the Parliament in the United Kingdom and said, Trump has set back transgender rights 20 years.
You think?
And she voted for him.
Really? Okay.
She's finally figured it out.
Wow.
All right.
Well, that's all right. One step at a time.
And then there's the Small Business Administration, which has deleted online resources for LGBT entrepreneurs. Nydia Velasquez, a congresswoman, is they're questioning about this,
But this was deleted over a year ago, so the congresswomen are asking, could you, we were told at the time, it's just being rewritten and fixed and we have some work to do, but a year and a half later, nothing has been restated, so they're asking, but they're getting nothing.
Our next president, Mike Pence, spoke at the most anti-LGBT college in the country, Hillsdale College in Michigan.
It's just the theocracy is really becoming more and more evident.
It's very, very, very scary, and it must be stopped because separation of church and state was the salvation of the United States. It is what made America great, but it's kind of over.
And lest you think we are blasting religion, what we're blasting are the policies of certain religions that are being elevated that are hateful and divisive and dangerous.
Right. Well, and I guess maybe we should even talk. Where are we with this? We should, but we should.
Well, let's get into politics.
Let's talk about that other big religious issue, which is that social workers suing in Michigan.
Okay.
Because it's on the religion. This is in Saginaw. Her name is Kathleen Lawrence, and she says she was discharged for not counseling a gay couple, and her Catholic faith was being violated. Now, she works for something called Health Source Saginaw, which is not a religious agency. And, here's the deal.
Government funds are
you won't counsel a couple. Well, so when a heterosexual couple comes in and they're divorced or something, you're going to say, well, my faith says you really need to get back together. God doesn't want this. Or just any kind of problem that people are going to express in a couple, like he's cheating on me or she's cheating on me or whatever. Oh, well, you're just going to give the religious view, or are you going to provide adequate social counseling, or are you going to get out of that business?
Well, I suspect...
Maybe you should become a priest, a Catholic priest. Oh, no, you can't. They don't let women do that.
I suspect hypocrisy here.
Well, I hope that
I don't think they are living those other tenets of their religion in these cases.
I hope it all comes out in trial that it's insane to take a position like that and then start invoking religion.
Well, and also in the government and religion melding realm in Oklahoma, Governor Mary Fallin has signed the Religious Freedom to Discriminate in Adoption Services bill.
Yes.
And, of course, Kansas is expected to follow suit very soon.
But in Vermont, Republican Governor Phil Scott signed the bill for single-serve restrooms that must be gender neutral by July the 1st.
And in Maryland, the legislature passed and the governor signed a no conversion therapy for minors
Republican
bill.
Governor Larry Hogan, right?
Yep.
But in New York State,
the
State Senate Committee, which is controlled by the Republicans because rogue Democrats let them do that, we've explained that, once again killed the transgender rights bill in committee. The Assembly passed it 100 to 43.
This is like whack-a-mole, or a Groundhog Day, excuse me, that's the better analogy. Every year, the Assembly passes the Gender Identity and Expression Non-Discrimination Bill, and then the other half of the legislature, the Republican-controlled half, the state Senate, kills the bill. Now, Governor Cuomo did a couple of years ago sign an executive order, I guess, putting into place some regulations to protect Trans People Against Discrimination.
And I think Governor Cynthia Nixon will renew that.
I think Governor Cynthia Nixon will find a way to get it through the New York State Senate.
Well, we may get some transgender legislators.
Yeah.
Now, there's a group called, a right-wing group called New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedom, and they are warning about 3 transgender candidates, they put the word in quotes, who are running, including our friend Melissa Sklar's. I believe there's Melissa on the right there, campaigning out in Queens. She's running for the Assembly, but there's people also running for the state Senate in various parts of the state.
Yeah, so all this anti-trans literature is out there. Now, there were primaries this week around the country in several states. It looks like progressive Democrats did pretty well in them. We have a primary.
A lot of women in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, next week in Texas, there is the primary for the Democratic nominee for governor, and Sheriff Lupe Valdez, the out lesbian who's been the sheriff of Dallas County for many years, is running against entrepreneur Andrew White. The Sheriff Valdez is very much in the lead.
And very out.
And very out, and very much under attack by the incumbent Governor Abbott, who would like to.
Well, he has insinuated her female partner into his ads so that people, and saying they're abortion supporters.
Yeah.
That's the way he's doing it.
But the most interesting political story of the week comes from Alabama and has just broken out as we were about to go to air. So maybe it's old news by the time you see it, but this is kind of cute.
This is weird.
We have told you for years about Representative Patricia Todd in Alabama, a state representative who's an out lesbian, very brave as an out lesbian for many, many years in the state legislature, now retiring.
Well, she's stepping down to head One Orlando Alliance starting June 1st. There's she on the left.
She's on the left. On the right is the current governor of Alabama,
on
Kay
the right in
Ivey.
more ways than one.
She took over as governor when Robert Bentley was discovered to have done some nefarious things and had to step aside. Yes, exactly. But Patricia Todd, maybe we want to put that picture up again. Patricia Todd has now said on her way out the door, will someone out her for God's sake? Meaning the governor, Kay Ivey.
She said this because Kay Ivey, somehow the state was funding some gay group under some federal thing or something, and she was taken to task about this, and she said, I do not share the values of that group. So that's why Patricia Todd wrote this tweet.
Thank you for that background. Here's the tweet again. Will someone out her for God's sake? I have heard for years that she is gay and moved her girlfriend out of her house when she became governor. I am sick of closeted elected officials.
Kay Ivey didn't speak for herself, and she's not running for election, but her spokesperson said it was a disgusting lie.
Kay Ivey is 73 years old, has no children, has been divorced twice. She is running. Is she running? She's running.
Oh,
there's a primary June 5th.
I apologize. I thought I read something earlier that she was not going to. All right.
But this has certainly thrown a little monkey wrench in the campaign.
Okay.
All right. In education news, in Kentucky, Nicholas Briner, I'm assuming that's the pronunciation of his name, he was fired a year ago when he came out as bisexual on Instagram. And he is now suing
he runs the chorus.
He is suing the Montgomery County Board of Education in Kentucky for sex discrimination under the federal Title VII. He says that he came out to help his students.
Who he knew to be suicidal in some cases.
And that he, in fact, stopped some suicides. But the school board fired him, so now he's suing.
Well, they said they fired him due to budget constraints, but then they hired a heterosexual woman to replace him.
Yes. So evidently they had the budget they had a heterosexual lane in the budget, but not a homosexual laid, or bisexual.
And we keep telling you about Stacey Bailey, the teacher in Texas who was suspended but not fired for being out as a lesbian, mentioning her partner in school. And the UFT's out lesbian president, Randy Weingarten, issued a big statement on her behalf this week.
And there's a little scandal going on in North Bend, Oregon. North Bend, there's a
rural North Bend, deeply rural.
A gay student at North Bend High School committed some unspecified infraction. They won't say what.
Being gay, I think it was.
Probably. Walking while gay.
Yes.
Yeah. He was told as punishment to read Bible passages. Out loud, yes. And so there's a dispute with the school, but they will not settle. They're sticking to their guns.
There's a big investigation by the Department of Education, so it's ongoing. There was a teacher there who compared same-sex marriage to marrying a dog.
And there's another gay student who was punished for reporting sexual harassment.
Yes. Well, it was really anti-LGBT harassment is kind of what it was. They're calling it sexual harassment. There's a hearing on all this on May 24th. Stay tuned.
But in better news, in Nevada, the State Department of Education is going to implement rules it promulgated to protect transgender kids.
And in Michigan, that anti-LGBT lawyer, Andrew Shkreli, who lost his law license over attacks on a gay student at the University of Michigan, that decision...
Wait, isn't it Martin Shkreli who's the...
Did I say Martin?
No, you said Andrew Shkreli, but his name is not Shkreli. It's Andrew something else.
It's something like that. I apologize. Let's just say Andrew, but don't confuse him with me.
Yeah.
Anyway, he lost his law license for attacks. That decision was affirmed by the Attorney Discipline Board. He had been an assistant attorney general in the state when he started these attacks and was ordered to pay $4.5 million to Christopher Armstrong. I think I have that name right.
I think so.
Who he was harassing.
A little footnote in the story of the Austin, Texas bomber, Mark Condit.
Oh, boy.
He was the one who was finally captured after leaving bombs around town.
Killing mainly black people.
Yes.
There he is on the screen.
Well, now his roommates, I guess, say he was gay. He was a conservative Christian and
very anti-gay.
So there's some thought that he was fighting his feelings.
Well, he left a message that he was a remorseless psychopath.
23 years old.
Obviously not dealing with who he was.
And in Dallas, Texas, another murder of a trans woman, Carla Patricia Flores Pavon, strangled to death at home.
And the body of a black trans woman, 5 foot 330 pounds, was pulled from the White Rock Creek on Saturday, and police are seeking help in identifying her.
In better news, in Chicago this Saturday at 4 p.m., they're going to name a section of Clark Street in honor of the late Chuck Renslow.
Go to 500 North Clark and you'll find them.
And in Des Moines, Iowa, in June 20th to 23rd, they're going to have the Cultivating Change Conference, which is for LGBT people in agriculture.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the Human Rights Campaign has issued its 2018 LGBTQ Youth Report, and it underscored that the special challenges of LGBTQ youth of color. 4 out of 5 personally experienced racism. I'm surprised it's not higher. And 21% say they have to think about racism every day.
Of course they do.
Well, only 21%, but it's, any is bad, and we have to work on that.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
International news?
How about the fact that the out gay judge, Paul Otkin, is that
Yes.
say his name? I think we should talk about this.
ahead.
Well, he's a federal judge. He had led a, quote, genderqueer and transmasculine plaintiff who's suing for employment discrimination sue anonymously, but he's now decided that's not fair to the plaintiffs in this case, the defendants in this case. Their name is out there, your name hasn't been out there, so the plaintiff is supposed to decide this week whether they want to go public and continue the suit. All right?
All right.
All right. Shelley Sullivan. Oh, and a bunch of gay people want to be New York State Attorney General, including...
Oh, Sean Patrick Maloney has not given up his race for Attorney General.
Not only that, but he wants to run for both offices this year, which he is supposed to be illegal,
well,
but he's trying to make it work.
That's why Kathleen Rice, the congresswoman from Long Island, has pulled out of the Attorney General race because she says she's not allowed to run for both.
Assemblymember Daniel O'Donnell wants to do it, and also Justice Doris Ling Cohan, who was the judge who issued the same-sex marriage decision in New York.
That would be interesting.
For Attorney General.
I would support.
And in Florida, in Orlando, at the Pulse Memorial, at the interim, they now have a plaque that has 48 of the 49 names on it. Some family doesn't want one of those names up there.
Okay.
All right. International.
Yeah. I'm actually most fascinated by by a lot of stories, but Malaysia. They're changing, the current leader is being ousted in disgrace, and they're bringing back the old leader who was a monster, but he's turning it around and becoming more progressive.
He's 92 years old.
Well, he's the one who kept going after his deputy, Anwar Ibrahim.
Yep.
And
sodomy.
Putting him in jail with trumped-up charges of sodomy. And now he's bringing Ibrahim back to power, and he's going to take over the country eventually.
It is a remarkable story.
It's crazy. Anyway, so in Italy, the Venice Biennale will include a cruising pavilion.
And it's about cruising.
Yes, but they also will be encouraging cruising there.
Well, okay.
It's a celebration. It's a challenge to the entire exhibition's heteronormativity.
Well, be careful what you do in Italy, because
drinks and poppers will be available at the May 24th opening.
Yes, indeed.
If you were considering going to the Biennale.
Because also in Italy, the Supreme Cassation Court has said that same-sex marriage between an Italian and a foreigner can't be registered in Italy, but they can convert it to a civil union if they like. In Mexico, in Tijuana, there's a migrant shelter for trans people who are coming up through Central America, and that was attacked. People were robbed. The place was robbed and set on fire. Very sad story. But in Costa Rica, the Supreme Electoral Court ruled that people can change their names according to their gender identity, and it will be shown that way on their ID cards. But they've also said no more gender markers on national ID cards. But they punted on marriage equality. They said that has to be instituted by the higher court or by the legislature. And
in India, they have new tax rules that also say that trans people can self-declare for IDs without documents.
Now, the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia, Idahat, is May 17th. Some of it'll be passed for some of you. But several regions in China are blocking LGBT events for that. But people are wearing rainbow badges in Beijing to try to draw attention to it.
But elsewhere in China, guards stopped and assaulted two women who were trying to enter the 798 Arts District with rainbow badges. And other events in that region were canceled. Also, well, we'll get to more on that in entertainment news with Eurovision.
The Justice Ministry in Russia is now saying at the UN that the rights of gays in Chechnya were not violated because there are no gays there. And this person said, asked for help in finding them.
Oh, God. Well, the International Lesbian and Gay Association, ILGA, put out a report that said progress for LGBT people is stalling in Europe. Now,
and it's going backwards in the United States.
Yeah, that too.
In some places. We give you all the news.
Well, Portugal.
Well, they have, by the way, ILGA. The ILGA has you can go to ilga-europe.org and you can see this map of everything that's happening all across the globe. I'll put that in our email this week.
In Portugal, the president has vetoed a bill to ease gender change and forbid unnecessary surgery for intersex people. There's some thought that the legislature can override that veto. That's what they'll be trying to do. But this is heinous that he vetoed that bill.
Did we have the news that the UK Parliament struck down, didn't move on same-sex marriage?
No.
Yeah, there's a big political impasse in Northern Ireland. They can't even meet the legislature because they can't agree on a government. So the United Kingdom government has the power to issue rules, and they were going to do same-sex marriage. But since they're dependent on the Democratic Unionist Party,
which is a right-wing party,
they will not do it. And the next
so a right-wing member of parliament, all on his lonesome, blocked Northern Ireland marriage in the British Parliament. There's going to be a big rally on June 2nd in Belfast, and another parliament vote in October.
Isn't there a court case that's still going forward
Yes.
there? Yes. Okay. That Kenyan lesbian movie, Rafiki, got a standing ovation at Cannes.
Yes, it did, but mixed reviews.
Okay.
We'll get to more of that.
Like Deliverance.
Also,
no, excuse me, Disobedience.
Yes, on this show.
Deliverance did.
I didn't like it. He did. Whatever. In Australia, they are increasing funding for pre-exposure prophylaxis, especially among Aboriginals where the virus is spreading more virulently.
And Canada is adding a third gender option to surveys, including their 2021 census. The United States doesn't even want to know if you're LGBT.
Here's the review from Variety of Rafiki. Modest, flawed, valuable.
There you go.
That's not too bad.
By the way, in the at the royal wedding in the United Kingdom this weekend,
yes. Do I have to watch that?
You can tape it and go through it. It's early in the morning, but
I don't really want to.
The address is going to be given by the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, the very pro-LGBT Michael Curry, who's also African American.
You have a biracial bride, and I think...
And they're very pro-L, that's one of their issues, as is for William and Kate.
Yeah.
They talk out on gay rights. They're not supposed to talk about these things, but they do. And they haven't had their heads chopped off.
In Cuba, they celebrated Pride in Havana.
Got a picture. There they are. There's Mariela Castro there in the car.
San Francisco and former New York activist Michael Petrelis was there taking rainbow flags. I don't know if any of those are his.
They were joined by Chilean trans actress Daniela Vega there from A Fantastic Woman.
Now, Mariela Castro, who is
Wait a minute. The Cuban president, the new president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, his kids performed at the end of the parade with a band called De Cuba.
Yes, but it's one thing to celebrate in the streets. It's another thing to give human rights.
Okay.
And
that's a start.
Mariela claims she's going to push for marriage equality in the new Constitution.
How long have you been promising us that, Mariela?
Well, yeah, and what about the activists, the LGBT activists who you don't talk to, who say that you are too much of a collaborator?
She's the daughter of Raul.
In Brazil, a non-binary model, Matusa Passarelli, who's an art student, was murdered at age 21. Sad story. And in Malaysia, the government has blocked HIV/AIDS and LGBT travel internet sites. So even as the government changes and we hope gets better, long way to go in Malaysia. All right, entertainment news?
Maybe some AIDS and HIV news?
Oh, there's a thought.
I have a viewer who said we should call it HIV news now, but it's all about that, and it's about your health.
HIV and health news, yes.
And hey, what's going on in Palm Springs and North Palm Springs? The syphilis rate there is 10 times that of the rest of the state. Men are using PrEP and not using condoms. We've been talking about this. There are other STIs that are out there. I mean, I don't want to sound moralistic about it, but let's take care of each other, folks.
Look, if you do not treat syphilis, even if you think you're not having symptoms, it can lead to brain damage, blindness, and organ damage.
And let's not forget that there are incurable strains of gonorrhea going on out there. They're untreatable. So. It's a
little shocking story got revealed this week that the Peace Corps has been kicking out people with HIV, and that the doctors who work with their members are really ignorant of PrEP and stigmatizing to gay men and Not a good situation. And on the one hand, they won't prescribe, a gay man who's working for the Peace Corps goes to the Peace Corps doctor and says, I want to be on PrEP. And they say, well, are you having unsafe sex? And the guy says, well, I'm trying not to. And he says, well, until you're having unsafe sex, we cannot prescribe PrEP for you.
It's catch-22.
Yeah. And then when they acquire HIV, then they're fired. Because only in certain countries are we able to take care of you if you have HIV.
And one of the problem areas is going to be Liberia. They've got a shortage of antiretroviral drugs there, created by management issues and bureaucracy, by the way. And it's panicking people with HIV. They obviously need this. And they've run out of the drugs that they give to kids with HIV, so they're giving them adult pills, split up, but not knowing whether it's going to work.
Mess. It's a mess.
And they're dependent on the global fund, but it's a management issue.
And the Trump administration is not helping. They're cutting funds, and the epidemic can rebound at any moment.
But if you get sick and you need marijuana, the district attorney of Manhattan, Cy Vance, says his office will no longer prosecute cases of marijuana possession and smoking. This was promoted, Speaker Corey Johnson and Al Sharpton have been calling for legalization, as has Cynthia Nixon, and I think even the governor now.
Yeah, well, he's getting there. And New York State's Department of Health has a new program, which is interesting. We talk about PrEP a lot here, prevention of infection by taking a pill every day or almost every day. But we haven't talked lately as much about PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis. If you have a sexual encounter or a needle
stick in a hospital
or whatever, if you get to medication within 72 hours, you can prevent infection with a 28-day course of treatment. So this is a sign on the Village Apothecary drugstore in Greenwich Village here in New York that they are a participating pharmacy in this new PEP for HIV prevention program from the Department of Health.
You can get it for a week without a prescription.
Yes, and you can also get counseling. You can get referred to a doctor if you don't have one, because they'll give you that week's supply, but then you have to get to a doctor to get the full course of treatment prescribed, because it is a 28-day course of treatment. But look for that sign, and if your pharmacy does not have that sign, tell them about the PEP program and encourage them to sign up as a participating pharmacy.
Okay.
Now, entertainment news?
Yes, I mentioned Rafiki, but there are 14 LGBT-themed movies showing at Cannes, which is twice as many as last year, and they say they're getting beyond coming out and the painful problems of homosexuality into other things. This French one, Sorry Angel, a gay love story at the height of the epidemic, sounds very interesting. We'll
keep an eye on those opening around here. You asked last week whether we could see the Eurovision contest. Well, it turned out we could, and I did.
Oh.
I fast-forwarded through a lot of it. We didn't win. No, even more politically explosive, Israel won.
Yes, I know.
But they did do the Ireland performance with the two gay men.
And it did get through to Russia?
It did get through to Russia, but it didn't get through to China because the China broadcast was banned because they had censored so much gay stuff. So, wait a minute, Russia doesn't have the broadcast, doesn't ban the broadcast, right. So that was good. Right. But the Irish singer's song, which had a lovely little dance between the two men, but was really kind of...
We sent it out in the email last week.
It was kind of benign, but, appreciated. But it finished in the middle of the pack. It really didn't get anywhere. But the Israeli song by this wacky girl called Toy, I Am Not Your Toy, You're a Stupid Boy, You Stupid Boy, won. It was sort of a feminist anthem and was seen as a victory for the Me Too movement. And the last time Israel won was the trans singer Dana International 20 years ago. That was a big deal, too. I can't believe it was 20 years ago we were talking about her.
So, and the big gay news, I guess, on Dancing with the Stars is that Tonya Harding has advanced.
How long have you been saving that to say? Did you work that up for 2 days?
I couldn't believe it. I had to look.
It's all about celebrity, but Adam Rippon is the leader. He is he's the expected winner.
It's almost unfair because he's such a good
dancer.
This is the athlete version.
But his best friend, the woman from the Olympics, got eliminated in the semifinals, and she was terrific too. So they're down to 3. This is an accelerated version. But next week is the final. And Adam Rippon is very much in it and could win it.
But it's the full version of Long Day's Journey into Night at the Brooklyn Academy of Music Harvey Theater in Brooklyn just till May 27th. This stars Matthew Beard, Jeremy Irons, Leslie Manville, and Rory Keenan. And, I have to say that they really tear each other apart in it. And this is the Great American Play, and it's a very good version. My review of it, my full review is in the Gay City News. Go to gaycitynews.nyc to read it. But I found this to be a very fine version of the play, imported from England, telling us about ourselves.
Okay. You saw some other stuff.
Well, I saw a play. I really was looking forward to this play called Gentleman Caller at the Cherry Lane. It's about Tennessee Williams and William Inge. That's Williams on the right there. In 1944, just as Glass Menagerie is coming out, and William Inge went to interview him at that time. That's true. But this play by Philip Dawkins, this guy did a lot of homework. It's very gay. It's very dark. But it's kind of undercut by what amount to gags about being gay, I think, and which I thought were kind of superficial, and some incredibly nasty lines by Tennessee Williams, who may have indeed been very nasty, but you didn't have to say what you said about Eleanor Roosevelt, and I am not going to repeat it on this family show.
Thank you.
Some of my reaction was colored by the fact that I actually was very close to the man who was Tennessee Williams' lover at the time. And that did not come up in the play.
Have you caught Vida on Stars?
No, I have not yet.
It's excellent.
Oh, I wanted to.
It's
I can see it on
Latino
demand.
neighborhood in L.A. 2 sisters who are professionals basically go back to the old neighborhood because their mother has died, and they're trying to figure out what to do with her bar restaurant. And they discover, much to their amazement, that she left a female wife. And a lovely butch woman who they were not expecting at all, and who they hate. So they're all trying to figure this out because the mother left the bar to all 3 of them, and so they have to figure this out.
I'm going to catch up with.
Limited series.
I am going to catch up with that.
The episodes are only half an hour, and there are only 5 or 6 of them.
On the male front, Operation Crucible at 59 East 59th is part of the Brits Off-Broadway series by Kiernan Knowles. It's about 4 steelworkers in Sheffield in 1940 while the city is getting bombed, and they get bombed in. It's very lively, but I could have done with more insight from them. It's a very lively physical play.
For fans of Instinct with Alan Cumming on CBS, it has been renewed for a second season.
I caught one of the episodes, yeah.
I have not, but
He's there playing an American.
I'm not
gay guy.
Yeah, I'm
with
not
a husband.
Not
or
surprised.
Partner, anyway, yeah.
But Transparent has announced that this upcoming season, its 5th or 6th, will be its last, whatever, without Jeffrey Tambor.
Who has gone to?
Back to whatchamacallit.
He has.
That's as close as we can get.
Yes.
It'll occur to us
It's been a
at 3
long
a.m.
day, and I hope it's a better week next week.
The Bluth family.
Good to see you. We'll see you next week with any luck.
If we can remember where to go. All right. See you next week.
Bye-bye.